All right, continuing on, we're going to look at EDI transactions and clearinghouses. There's 28 questions here. You're going to, on these particular questions, you're going to look at the type of transactions that we have electronically. So you're going to determine which one is a covered electronic transaction, what it would fall under. Clearinghouses, you're going to, is it a clearinghouse? Is it a business associate? As well as some of the other intricacies. The very first thing here is you've got your background. There's questions on the test that have to do with electronic claims and what they're considered electronic. One of the things that confuses individuals is electronic. So when it says it's electronic, it means electronic. So electronic claims have been sent between providers and health plans since the mid 1980s. Up until that point, a lot of places still sent paper claims. However, there were some that if you didn't have very many, you did do it electronic. The format has changed to the ANSI format versus the other format. It's to help it be utilized and copied easier. The normal national standard format that they had was never the standard because every health plan created their own. So it was more difficult. That's why a lot of times providers didn't bill to as many healthcare carriers as were as available because everyone had specifics. And so in order to bill the correct one, you had to have the correct form. So we didn't bill as many. The provider could submit to a clearinghouse in the national standard format as long as the clearinghouse can translate it. The claim into an 837 transaction. That number is going to come in, be very specific later. So we want to make sure that you can submit the information to the clearinghouse as long as it can translate it into the correct format to the carrier. It is considered a clearinghouse. Health plan can continue to use their proprietary format as long as that clearinghouse can accept the national standard transaction format now. And then any health plan accepting electronic transmission is required to accept those transactions in the standard format. So they have to be able to receive it and accept it. With HIPAA, we've got HIPAA in a couple of places. We have HIPAA here because of the formatting and what's considered covered entity or business associate. And then you also have HIPAA in the compliance section. So when you're answering these questions on the certification that has to do with HIPAA, it's good to know exactly where that information is. I will tell you that utilizing the index at the back doesn't always get you to the right place, probably because they've updated it as changes were made, but they didn't necessarily update their index. So you want to be able to make sure you know where to find that information in the study guide. I just tabbed the different sections with Post-it notes just so I could turn to them. And as I moved to a different section, I kind of removed that unless I needed to go back to it. That was just me keeping things kind of less chaotic for myself. But any way that it works for you is obviously the best way to do things. So again, HIPAA, their new standard form is version 4010, and it started in October 2015, and that was to accommodate the I-10. So it went from that 4 diagnosis standard form to the 12 and to accept those 7 characters on that claims form. So we have entities, covered entities versus business associates. Business associates is anyone that does business, that provides a service to an organization. It doesn't necessarily mean they're covered by HIPAA. It means that they fall under that. But at the same time, they should have their own liability insurance to protect them against that, as well as the organization should have insurance and should have a contract stating that they are not responsible for the business associate's behavior. So if they share information that's not supposed to be shared, we want to make sure that both parties are protected. Covered entities are the ones that can send claims electronically. So that's the difference between being a covered entity and being a business associate. A business associate can simply transmit a print file, which is a screenshot, a snapshot of the claims data to back to the organization. But it can't convert or transfer in the right format. So they have to be able to send it electronically. And there are 3 types of covered entities. You've got your clearinghouses, which that's the middleman between the billing company and the provider, the billing company and the biller. So as long as they can submit things electronically, they do fall under the covered entity. And we have some clearinghouses versus business associates later in this instructional series. Okay, so covered transactions, making sure. Yeah. So covered transactions, what's considered a covered transaction? So in order to be covered and fall under the HIPAA, you have to be able to submit electronic claims, receive electronic claims, the payment, the remittance info, electronic query, status information, electronic query insurance eligibility, electronically receive eligibility information, send referral authorization, and receive the referral authorization. There are 9 types of electronic transaction numerators that it falls under. For your certification exam, you are actually going to select one of these. You'll have all of them there, and you'll select the one based on the scenario they give you. So what you need to understand is that the explanation, the definition, what's included is not in your study guide. They only simply give you the numbers. Now you can go out and you can Google just by putting the electronic transaction number and then the number in it will give you the description of each one of those. But what I've done is I'm just going to kind of go over each one of these. So 834 is representing a fact such as the subscriber's name, hire date, etc. So on this one, it's going to be used to transfer enrollment information from the sponsor of the insurance coverage benefits policy to a payer. So enrollment, disenrollment. 837 is for a single care encounter between the patient and a provider, and it's going to be a description of the patient. 835 provides claim payment information. So used by practices, facilities, and billing companies to auto post claim payments and info to their systems. 820 is used to share payments or order remittance advice. So it communicates electronically with trading partners, payment order information such as invoice numbers. 270, it requests eligibility and benefit information from the insurance company of the patient. 271 is used to provide information about healthcare policy coverages relative to the specific subscriber or subscriber's dependent seeking medical services. 278 is the hospital will send a request of an authorization from a payer, such as the insurance company, for information copay, or any health services review information sent to the service providers. 276 and 277. 276 is used to send an inquiry about current status of the specified claim or claims, and 277 is just the response to that inquiry. Then finally, we have our national provider indicator. So they can be individual or they can be a group MPI. They can use both. They can use just the group MPI or an individual only, depending on the carrier. So you want to make sure your health plan, you want to look at those specifics. And then some plans require the individual MPI to process claims like your labs and your pharmacy under an individual, because when they're submitted under the group, they can be denied. Your clearinghouse. So under the clearinghouse, there's two purposes here. Billers use to check for accuracy before claims are submitted to the payer, and then they can reformat the data the biller sends to meet HIPAA. So if they're checking for accuracy, you want to make sure the claims are correct for electronic claims to be paid. If there is any claims errors, they are going to be rejected. So such as demographic information, it's not going to catch modifier usage. It's not going to catch if they're ineligible for that. Reformatting the data. The benefit here is it's going to reduce the cost, reduce payment, turnaround time, and there's going to be fewer errors. And clearinghouses cannot reject the claims based because the policy was terminated, incorrect Social Security number, claim numbers. That's your responsibility to check. So again, those could go ahead and be pushed through and denied on the other end. So it's rejected up front, but denied once it meets the claim, gets to the carrier. The note with the accuracy, paper claims, because they're paper, the carriers normally forgive minor issues, such as probably the policy, the wrong number, whereas the electronic, they're not forgiven so easy. So clearinghouses convert non-standard transaction to covered transaction. Other services they can do, and you do have questions about other services, they do electronic statement processing, they do eligibility verification, they can do electronic remittance advices, electronic funds transfer, and they can earn extra income by submitting claims on top of what the billers and providers pay. However, that's not a practice that's normally done now, because what happens is the biller or billing company has an all-exclusive contract with the clearinghouse, so they get a reduced payment. And then Medicare, another reason you may want to use a clearinghouse is because Medicare can penalize providers that do submit paper claims. So a print file. A print file is not being sent electronic, so that would mean you're going to send it to a clearinghouse to be changed over. It's a text file of a claim, and they can receive print files, but they normally don't accept those anymore. They want the process changed. Another question is, when a billing service, when is it considered a clearinghouse under HIPAA? So it processes or facilitates processing of health information received from another entity in non-standard format, or contains non-standard data content into standard data or transaction. It receives standard transactions from another entity and processes or facilitates the processing of health information into non-standard format and data. So those are some of the questions, and you do have questions on your certification that does relate to those. So an example, clearinghouse or not a clearinghouse. So we have this one: the healthcare provider sends a claims data on paper to the billing service, one with which it has a contractual agreement, whereby the billing service one converts the paper data into the standard claim transaction and then transmits to the health plan. Billing service one is a healthcare clearinghouse because it receives non-standard data and converts it into the standard transaction. So again, it is a clearinghouse because it meets those things. It converted it into the data. Another one is a healthcare provider sends the claims data on paper to billing service 2, with which it has a contractual agreement. Billing service 2 converts the paper data into a standard claim and transmits it to the health billing plan. Billing service 2, in order to fulfill that contractual agreement, has an arrangement with the healthcare clearinghouse A, whereby the healthcare clearinghouse A receives paper data from the billing service 2 and converts it into the non-standard and transmits it to the health plan. It is a clearinghouse. Essentially, billing service 2 outsourced the translation function to the healthcare clearinghouse because it contracted with the provider to perform clearinghouse function, which it does by outsourcing. So it does make it a clearinghouse. Another example, a healthcare service provider has a contractual agreement with billing service 3. Billing service 3 conducts various claims preparation services and then transmits non-standard claims to the healthcare clearinghouse B for conversion into standard format and transmission to the health plan. The healthcare provider has a contractual arrangement with healthcare clearinghouse B, whereby healthcare clearinghouse B receives the non-standard from the billing service and converts it. The billing service 3 is not, because it does not convert the data, nor does it outsource. Okay, so there are a few examples. That's some of the types of questions you're going to have on the test as far as EDI transactions and clearinghouses. The next